Hello, welcome to ZIM Capture number 9. I'm inventor Dan Zen, and ZIM at zimjs.com is an open source library to make interactive media on the HTML canvas using JavaScript and Create.js. In this ZIM Capture, I'd like to take a look at two different ways that we can use parameters with ZIM. The traditional way, where you have the function and the round brackets of the function, and you specify each parameter value separated by commas. And then there's a second way, ZIM Duo, that was launched in ZIM Duo, that lets you pass in a single parameter that is a configuration object. All right, so let's take a look at how we can do that. And to do that, we'll go down to the frame section here to pull up a template. And we'll choose the fit template. And then you can Control U to get this code and file save as or what have you to save this code and start your own document. I've done that already, so I'm just going to close this down, and here it is in Atom. So if we scroll down, this uses ZimFrame, and we've already talked about ZimFrame a few times in different captures. So now we want to take a look at where it says put your code here. We're going to just delete the code, and it also says you can delete that code. Yeah, we're going to delete the code that's there. That's just the sort of a default button, and I'd like to build a button with you together and talk about parameters as we do. Okay. So we'll leave the stage.update in there so that you can see updates as we build here. Let's make a button. Var button is equal to a new Zim, that's the namespace, button, that's the class, and so we're making a new button object from that class and storing it in the button variable. We would also need to add it to the stage. Stage.addChild button, like so. Okay, and then we've got the stage.update still happening there, so we'll see that update. And let's save that up and open in a browser. There it is. There's the button. That's the default button. It says press. It's orange. It's got round corners, and it is positioned as 0, 0. Okay. So let's adjust a few things there. One, let's make that button say hi. Okay, now to make the button say hi, we pass in a parameter that will help us do that. So we need to find out what the parameters are. Why don't we go out to Zim? I will open a new tab there. We'll go to Zim. We will open up the docs and scroll on down until you see the build module. The build module holds circles, rectangles, triangles, and labels and buttons and the rest of the components. So we will take a look at the parameters available to the button. I'm going to select all those. Weep. There's a lot of them. I'm going to copy. Now if you want, you could expand that open and find out what all those parameters are about, but I'm going to just paste them. Most of them are self-explanatory. I'm going to paste them right in there just above the button so we can have a look at them. And I quite often do that if I've got a lot of parameters that I'm going to be working with. So width, height, label. Let's ignore the width and the height for now. And the way to ignore is to say null, comma, null. So we're passing in parameters, and we're just going to pass in null for the first two. And that will, by default, take the default parameters. But for the label, let's make it say hi. Quote, hi. Okay, and the other thing, so that we can see this a bit better and it's not just right up in the corner, is let's move it. So we will put it, we will say button.x is equal to 300, button.y is equal to 200, or something like that. Okay, so let's see if this button says hi now and has moved more towards the center. Refresh. Sure enough, it has. We could always center that button by saying zim.center, round bracket, button, comma, stage. There it is. It says hi. Super. Now let's see. What if we did want the width and the height? Let's make it sort of more square and around the word hi. How about? We will say 60, comma, 60. So now we're putting values into those widths and height. And we hit save and a refresh. There it is. But I don't want the rounded corners. I'm kind of liking it, but I don't want the rounded corners. So we come back into our code and we look and we say corners. Let's see, where the heck are they? There's the corner parameter. So that means we have to go from the label, we have to do a color, a roll color, border thickness, 4 things, and then the corner. So here we are starting to count, comma, null, that's 1 default, comma, null, because I don't want to put in any of those colors, I'll just use the defaults, but now I have to put in all these nulls. Crumble, crumble. To make sure I have the right number, it's a pain in the neck to type, and now finally we get to a corner of 0. So let's open that up just a little bit, 70 and 70 we'll call it as well. Make a slight change to it so we can make sure that this is working properly, and also I wanted it a little bit bigger there. Are you ready? Let's see what happens to the corner. We refresh. There, it's a little bit bigger, and it now has square corners. Yay! Okay. That was one way. That's the traditional way to pass in parameters, and when I do that, I often just put all the parameters up top here so that I can easily correlate them. Now, it would help if the syntax highlighting or the IDE that we're using sort of put in those values for us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Adam at the moment is not doing that for me, but it would be nice if it did. So here's the alternative to doing that, and this is when we pass in a single configuration object to the button. So let's build this again. Var button equals a new ZIM.button. This part's the same. And in round brackets, we put a single parameter that is a configuration object. So that's our object literal. And the way objects work is you have some name of a property, like a property name, property, colon, and then some value. If the value is a string, there it is. So, and then you would say, comma, and some other name of a property and some other value. If the value is a number, it would be a number like that. So the way ZIM works with this in ZIM Duo is it uses the name of the parameters in the documentation as the property name in the object. So we have to match those. So here's width, for instance, width. And let's make it even just a touch bigger, 80. And height, H-E-I-G-T, or with an H in there, 80. Comma, the label, colon, high. And now we can ignore all these things in the middle. We don't even have to know about them at all, and just go right to the corner now. See the advantage of that? Corner 0. So great. Let's see if this works. We save that up, and we refresh here. And there it is, a little bit bigger and still working. So this is the ZIM Duo method, where we specify a configuration object. Cool, huh? All right, now this does 2 things. One, we don't have to worry about counting anymore. As a matter of fact, I happen to remember all of those parameters, so I could have built this without even looking at this and you know, gone in and have to count and copy this and all that kind of stuff. I can build it without looking. So that's cool. It can be shorter depending on how many nulls you had to go over. Okay, so it can be shorter in characters. But aside from that, it's also very readable. So that's another thing that it does, is it allows us to look at this code and know right away what we were doing with this button. We were providing a width, height, label, and a corner. And that's good for us when we're reading our own code. It's also good for people who are looking at your code and may not know too much about it. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you today, is the ZIM Duo method of passing in a configuration object. Now, since we're here, we may as well look a little bit at the button. Now, imagine we wanted a width of 180 and a height of 180, and we wanted a big button. And if I refresh here, let's see what it is. There it is. But the text of the button is too small now. Well, could be considered too small. I want it bigger. Or it may be that I want it a different color. For instance, we can change the color of the button. This color in the button is the color of the button. So if it doesn't really matter the order of these things. I'm just going to tuck the color right here at the beginning. Color, I usually keep them in the same order, but there's no real reason to do that. Black, comma. So, or let's make it a white button. White button. All right, so we can change the color of the button like so, And obviously we're going to see a problem. If we've got a white button, the default color of that font of the button is white. So, oh, that's pretty bad. We want to change the color now of the label on the button. And it appears that there's no real way to do that in the button parameters because color is for the button, so is roll color and all these other ones. What it is ZIM, you can pass in a ZIM label. So you can also create a ZIM label component and pass that in as the label. So if you want to change things about the label, such as the size, the color, the roll color, the type of font, etc., all those parameters are available on the label. And then we just pass in the new label that we made here rather than the string hi. So if you do pass in a label that is just a string, it will use default label properties to make that for you. Okay, and those default label properties include a white font. So let's make a new label here to find out what we can add to the label in terms of properties. The label is the one just in above the button. So text, size, font, blah, 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 blah. I'll just copy those. Copy, including alignment and so forth, and put them up here. Okay, let's make a label. Var label equals a new zim.label. And in the round brackets, we put the text. It says hi, comma, the size, we'll make it bigger. How about 90? Comma, the font, we don't care about the font, we'll leave it the same font, which was some Arial or something like that. And then the color, we'll want to change that to black, for instance. Okay, there's our label. Now that only makes a label. We didn't add it to the stage. We certainly have not yet added it to the button, and so that's what we need to do next. And we go to the button, and where it says label, quote, hi, we would say label, or sorry, colon, quote, hi, we would say label, colon, label. You know, that looks a little bit unusual, label, colon, label, or oh, what the heck, will that possibly work? Yeah, that works. Label, the first label is the property name in your object, and the second label is the value, which is a variable name, or the variable label. If you really don't like that because it weirds you out or something like that, you can change that to my label there, and then back here you would change the var to my label there as well. Let's save this and see if it works. So we save and do a refresh here. Refresh, now we've got a big label that is saying hi on our button and it's black. All right, good. So that's what I wanted to show you today, is just how to use the two different techniques for parameters. You can always swap if you so desire. Shall we try it one more time, just in summary here? This was, so we put an object around it. This was the text, colon hi. This was the size, colon 90. We don't need the null anymore. And this black was the color, colon black. And then we end our object right there. All right, we save that up, and if we change that to blue, for instance, and come in here and refresh, that works as well. Okay, great. I'm inventor Dan Zen. This has been a ZIM Capture to show you two different ways to do parameters. Also showed you a little bit about ZIM buttons and how we can change the text on the button and format that better using a ZIM label. Have a great day.